This is all 4 hooves being trimmed on this little pony. It is a maintenance trim, so there's not a whole lot to do, which is a great example for a horse owner wanting to trim their own horse's hooves because you can keep up on it before they get too long. So first off, I'm starting here by just bringing her bar height down. I'm using my nippers for this. I could use a hoof knife, but I find it's easier to use nippers. And the bars should go halfway down the hoof. So I lowered the height of them up at the top part of the frog, and I took them down all the way on the bottom part of the frog. Now I'm just using my nippers to bring her heels down. And really that's all I needed the nippers for because there's not a lot of wall height. So I'm going to use my rasp to bring down and level out her hoof wall. I could have used my nippers, but I could have accidentally created a low spot because there wasn't actually that much to take off. So that's why I switched to my rasp. So I keep checking the balance here to make sure that they're even, and I needed to take a little more off at the toe. I'm checking the balance again. You want to check your balance frequently throughout your trim to make sure you don't create low spots. You can never check your balance too much, especially if you're just starting out. I would check your balance at the beginning of the trim, throughout, and at the end. It's a great habit and practice to be in. So now that the hoof wall height is down, I'm just cleaning up her frog. There's not a lot to do here, and because it is still winter, you want to clean up as the frog so there's no flaps, but also every time you trim the frog, it's making it easier for bacteria to get in. So it's a fine balance of cleaning it up, but also not taking too much. And really all that she needed was her central sulcus cleared out there. I wanted to leave the rest of that. Now what I'm doing is bringing the hoof wall height in. So I'm not taking down the height of it. I'm bringing it in. So I'm bringing her toe back. And what I'm doing is I'm trimming to the water line. So that is right outside the white line. And I'm rough cutting my Mustang roll here, the hoof bevel. So I'm going to have to smooth this out with the rasp after, but I'm taking all that chunk of hoof material off so I don't spend too much time with my rasp and dull it too much. So even though I didn't need to take height down with my nippers on this hoof, I did want to use them to bring the hoof wall in, which is something I do a lot, is use the rasp to bring the wall height down and then the nippers to bring it in. So here I'm just smoothing out that bevel. You want the bevel to go all the way from the heels all the way around to the toe. And to be exact, you want the bevel steeper at the toe, and then it gets less steep as it goes back to the heels. But that is a little bit more advanced. If you're just practicing beveling your horse's hooves, you can just work on doing it even all the way around. Again, checking that balance. A little bit to take down on that heel there. Now that I've got the foot pulled forward and I'm smoothing out the bevel from the top, making everything look really nice, and just finishing the bevel. Making sure that toe is brought back enough and there's no sharp edges, making sure there's no sharp points where it could more easily chip. I'm using the fine side of my rasp here now just to make it look really nice. There's not a whole lot of hoof coming out. Onto the back hoof. I'm going to trim her ergot here first. Just getting the hair out of the way as much as possible. And I use my nippers for this. The nippers are very sharp, but when hair gets in there, they actually don't cut through hair at all. I'm going to start off trimming her ergot here, or not ergot, I'm going to start off trimming her central sulcus. Just open it up a little bit because there was a little bit of a pocket in there. And just clean out that little bit of dirt that she has. Her feet are not that muddy considering it's pretty muddy and rainy out. And again, her frogs are really healthy. There's not a lot to trim here. There's a little flap here on the collateral groove that I'm going to get. And a lot of times when you're trimming a frog that's healthy, and if there's not, thrush or mud or the frog shedding, really all you're going to trim is that little central sulcus and that top part of the collateral grooves where flaps can grow. And sometimes stuff gets caught on your nippers like that, and you just got to pull it off. These little bonsai nippers are great for an area that's small, like the central sulcus, where my nippers could not be precise enough, and I really just wanted to get that little flap off. You can use a hoof knife too. I just prefer to use these little bonsai nippers. I find they work really well. There's that little pocket that I'm exposing. You can see it's the little brown area right in the center. Going straight to the bars. I'm lowering the bar height a little bit, but not taking it all the way down. A general rule for trimming the bars is that if you trim them and they come back within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they grow back just to the height they were at before, the horse probably needed it. And here I didn't want to use my nippers at all for the hoof wall height. I went straight to using my rasp and just taking those heels down, checking the balance. You can see on the left side of the foot at the quarter, she has a little bit of a flare, so I will address that going forward in the trim. Now, using my nippers to bring that hoof wall in, like I talked about, again, trimming into the water line, not the white line. Also rough doing the bevel here. That's going to save you a lot of time to start your bevel with your nippers and then just finish smoothing it out with the rasp like I'm doing here. Now I'm bringing that flare in a little bit. Using my fine side of the rasp because it catches less when you're bringing in the quarters, I find. And again, just smoothing out the outside with the fine side of the rasp. When you are top dressing like this, I usually only go up about a 1/2 inch up the hoof. That is, unless there is a flare that you're bringing in or something you're correcting, in which case you still never want to go more than 1/3 of the way up the hoof. So that's where I was getting that flare. The flare was on the inside of the hoof. Onto the next foot, the other hind foot, getting that ergot right away. You don't have to trim these, but a lot of owners like them to be trimmed. And that one was getting pretty long. So I'm starting off here just with my bonsai nippers. There was a little flap of frog there that was shedding. And again, coming in on that central sulcus because there was a pocket in there. And I don't want mud getting trapped in there or poop or any kind of debris. She's gone through this winter without getting too much thrush, so I want to keep it that way. And just these same collateral groove flaps that I did on the other hoof. Again, these are your most common trimming points for the frog. All of the rest of the frog just leave alone because the frog is a great shock absorber and it does bear the weight of the hoof. So if you trim it all away, it's going to put too much pressure on the rest of the hoof. And I'm just using my hoof knife to clean out these collateral grooves a little bit. Not too much needing to be done there. Just a little pocket left. Here I'm using the bonsai nippers on the bars. That's another tool that they are great for, especially in the summer when the hooves are really hard and your hoof knife is just slipping off of them. But I was able to use them now as well. And again, no need to use my nippers to take down the wall height. You can see I put my foot onto the stand there. This is a great technique if your stand is kind of wobbly. I've got a foot on either side of the stand holding it stable. If you want a really stable hoof for the front feet, I like to put the foot in between my legs, but it's a lot harder to do that on the back leg, especially if the horse is shorter like this. This is actually a pony. It's going to be too hard for her to hold her leg up as high as it would have to be if I was holding it myself in between my own legs. So that's going to make her stiff, make her uncomfortable, make her not want to hold her leg up. So if I do need to use my stand like this, I can make it more stable by putting my feet on it. And again, I just used my nippers to bring that toe back, that hoof wall height in. Now finishing that bevel with my rasp. One thing that I'm doing here is I am pushing down when I'm rasping, like going on the rasp stroke, and then lifting up to start the rasp stroke again, because if I was just kept the rasp in contact with the hoof the whole time, it would make it dull quicker. And here I do have the other stand attachment to bring the foot forward, but I often don't switch it out when I'm working like this because I'm trimming so many horses in a day, and I just put the foot on the cup, which if you're trimming your own horse, I would recommend to utilize that other part of the stand that is meant for bringing the hoof forward, because it's going to make it a lot easier for you to get access to the whole hoof. Again, get the ergot really quickly. Her front feet grew a little bit longer than her hind, so I will be using my nippers a little more on this foot probably. I like to just start off by doing the frogs and the bars usually when I'm trimming, but you can do however you prefer. If you want to start with the hoof wall and finish with the frog. The bars are actually just an extension of the hoof wall, but I don't really do them in my trim process of the wall. I keep them separate usually when I trim the frog, just because I like to get those two things done. So I am using my nippers here to take down some of that wall height. You can see she has a little chip there, so I'm just ignoring the chip, pretending that it's not there, as if there was hoof wall there. So I just skipped over it and continued trimming the hoof wall. I am moving my nipper blades over about halfway, maybe a little more than that, because the hoof is pretty soft and because it's so wet right now. But to keep an even trim, I am not moving the nipper blade all the way over. That's why the hoof is coming off in those big chunks. Then this heel wasn't quite as high, so I just took that one down with my rasp. And finishing up with the rasp, what I didn't do, checking the balance. Now kind of doing the Mustang roll here as well at the same time. And just as you see, ignoring that chip and trimming around it the rest of the hoof as you regularly would, it got smaller to where you almost couldn't notice it anymore. And as the hoof grows out more and you trim a little more, it will be gone completely. Just smoothing out from the outside here. I mostly use my fine side on the top of the hoof, but sometimes if I'm trying to bring the toe back a lot from the front, I will use the stronger side, the aggressive side of the rasp. But for this kind of stuff, I just use the fine side. And this was the ergot on the first foot that I didn't do.